Okay, we'll start with the invocation to Patanjali. So you can repeat after me. Now call and response. Yogena chatasya padena vacham.
Yogena chitasya padena vacham.
Good. Malam sharirasya cha vaidjakena.
Malam sharirasya cha vaidjakena.
Okay. Yo pakarotam pravaram muninam.
Yo parakarotam
Pravaram muninam. Patanjalim pranjalir anatoshmi.
Patanjalim
Pranjalir anatoshmi. Good. Now you know this part. Abahu purushakaram.
Abahu purushakaram.
Shankachakrasi dharanam.
Shankachakrasi dharanam.
Sahasra shirasam shvetam.
Sahasra shrisam shvetam.
Pranamami Patanjalim.
Pranamami Patanjalim.
Great. Okay. So this week's sutra is 1.7. Just working our way right along. So it is pratyaksha. So you can say it, I'll say it back. Or I'll say it, you can say it back. Pratyaksha.
Pratyaksha.
Anumana. Gamaha. Pramānāni.
Pramānāni.
Pratyaksha. Anuma. Anaganama. Amagama, yeah. Pramānāni.
Pramānāni.
There's a lot of A's in this one. All right, so direct translation for this, there's a lot of different ways that it's written, but one way is that the ways to attain pramana, which in the last sutra, pramana was introduced as one of 5 sort of buckets of types of vrttis. So the vrttis are the thought, the movements in the mind, fluctuations, it means fluctuations. So it's the types of thought patterns that we have, that we work with. And so this is the first one, pramana. And pramana is sort of different from the rest because it's correct understanding of something. So it says the ways to attain pramana are through direct experience. It's like 3 ways: direct experience, inference or logic, kind of rationale, like working something out based on data, you could say, and or hearing it from a trusted authority, or testimony is sometimes the word that is used. And so one way to think about this is that right understanding is arrived at through 3 sort of reliable means. And a good analogy for this is like direct experience, inference, and testimony, or from authority. And a good analogy is, let's say you're staying in a cabin in the woods, and you leave the cabin and walk up to the top of a hill, and you discover fire there. There's a fire, and you see it, you feel it, it's burning. That is your direct experience. You know there's fire, right? But let's say that you just open up the door to the cabin, walk outside, and you don't go up to the hill, but you see there's smoke coming from up there. So we know that where there's smoke, there's fire. So that's an example of inference. You can infer this knowledge, this understanding that there's fire, even though you haven't directly experienced the fire. And the third way is if you open the door to the cabin, or no, let's say you're in your cabin and the fireman comes to the door and knocks on the door and you open it and he says, "Hey, be careful, there's a fire out here on the mountain." You trust the fireman, right? Like that's his job, he's there to protect you. And so you believe what he's saying and you take it on his authority that there's fire. So these are said to be the three ways, according to Patanjali. And the Buddha, this is similar to teachings from the Buddha as well, on how we know. And the Buddha gave in the Kalama Sutra, he was talking to this group of people called the Kalamas, and he talks about how to know if you can trust a teacher, and gives really good guidance on that. So this is a very important topic. It's like, how do we know what we know, and how do we trust what we know, or what we think we know? And this is a very important category of the thoughts that we have as well, because this is the category of thought that contributes to us having steadiness of mind. The things that we can count on, the things that we understand, the things that we know to be true, are more likely to support yogascitta vritti nirodha, in the way that I see it. It's like we're trying to work with the mind to create steadiness in the mind, potentially stillness in the mind. And it's easier to do that when we're in, first of all, when we're in an environment that is based on truth. One way to say it, but also when we're in an environment, when we're in a situation where it's based on our direct experience. So this is where meditation becomes such an important part of this equation. And it's the reason why I chose to do the meditation that we did today, where we're working with the emotions coming up within us, because that is our direct experience. We can actually connect with that. And it's also very important because one of the things that we tend to do in that situation, if the emotion is something that we don't like, that we don't want to experience, we tend to suppress it or turn away from it or shun it or judge it, or be shamed by it, or all these different things. So whether or not the emotion is positive or negative, it's part of our experience. And one of the ways that, as from my teacher Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche, that is really helpful is to actually just be with that experience of the emotion and allow the process of being with it to help you understand it, and thereby help you transform it and turn that experience into something that, instead of continues to bother you, to plague you, to distract you, to cause anger, whatever it is, you are able to maybe transform that into something that's useful, something that's even beneficial in your practice, in your life, or in the lives of others, everyone you come in contact with, right? Because if our direct experience is anger, and we suppress that anger again and again and again, what does it do? When you push down on something, it gets bigger. When you apply force, and it just like builds up. So then it's much more likely that anger is going to translate into action in the world that is harmful. This is all like interrelated in how we deal with these things. Another way to kind of think about the first kind of way of knowing this direct experience is that it's also based on our senses, sense perception. So our senses are a very important component of our experience of the world. They're how we experience the world, right? So when we use in our meditation practice, for example, the senses, and or as we work through the limbs of Ashtanga, and we go into like the aspect or the practice of pratyahara, where we're learning to work with the senses, where we're learning to manage the senses in a way where they're not driving us, we're in charge, then we are much more likely to be able to take what we're experiencing in the world and turn that into something useful, something that we're in charge of. We know what we're doing from moment to moment, you know. I think that that's one of the things about the pratyahara practice. It's a bit it's a bit difficult sometimes to get your head around, or like how to practice pratyahara. Like the other limbs are a little more straightforward. You know, we've got the yamas, the niyamas. The yamas are how we act toward others, behave in the world. The niyamas are ways that we like cultivate and support ourselves. We practice. It's like pretty simple to like kind of apply actual things that we do. Asana, we do these practices on the mat. We do the sitting on the cushion. Asana is this seat for meditation. We know what that is. Pranayama, we're working with the breath. That's pretty straightforward, you know. And then you get to pratyahara, and it's like withdraw your senses, you know. And I think that one of the things that we underestimate is the power of our asana practice to provide the opportunity to work with our senses and to learn to draw them in. So one of the things that you notice and that I see very, very clearly as a teacher in front of the room or in the room in a Mysore setting is that people at different phases of their experience level of their their practice are practicing pratyahara to very different degrees. When you first start, you're in the vitarka stage, your mind is trying to figure things out, and you're going outward to pull in information, even looking to the person next to you to try to figure out and help you know what to do, right? Like that outward. But as you gain experience in Ashtanga and you know what to do, you don't have to go out for information anymore. Then that gives you the opportunity to start going more and more inward. So the practice never stops getting more subtle. There's never an end to what we can discover within our own bodies. That's like so unbelievable. It's huge. My teacher, David Garrigues, used to say that our practice and the work we do in our body is a microcosm of the macrocosm. That everything that's happening in the world is happening in here. Of course, in Buddhism, there's often there's the understanding that we're like everything that's happening out here, it's coming from here. It's like, you know, not even real in the sense that it's not permanent. It's all changing all the time. So with these truths, we can see that what we can gain from spending that time on the mat is just magnitudes of knowledge because it is direct experience and it is sensory perception. You know, it's like incredibly mind-blowing to really think about this. And if you can just embrace the stage that you're in, but by embrace it, I mean, yeah, like embrace it, stay with it, be consistent in your practice, and enjoy the ride because it evolves all the time. And the other thing that then happens is like, and these are an example of direct experience that is incredibly valuable. The obstacles. We hear the word obstacle and we have an idea in our mind of what that means. And it can bring up emotion. It can bring up, you know, descriptive patterns in our mind of like, oh shit, like this thing is going to trip me up. It's going to set me back. It's going to like, you know, that's like the things that obstacle conjures up. But all we have to do is see obstacle as opportunity. The obstacles are the thing that project us forward in the biggest way when we embrace it, when we work with it, instead of, again, running away from it, trying to suppress it, or trying to ignore it, or not fully like embracing it and seeing it for what it is. When we encounter moments of deep, like full-on anger with our partner, for example. Let's say you're in a relationship and you you have a disagreement, and this disagreement turns really nasty, right? And you lose your temper. So this is me speaking from direct experience, right? So I historically I have a temper, and it's been probably the biggest thing that I've tried to work with in the last 22 years of practicing yoga and Buddhism, because I know it hurts people in a very significant way. So I really hate it when I don't succeed in working with that, and I let it manifest as rage, as outward words or actions that are not nice, you know? So this is it's a common thing, right? Like, people get angry with their significant others, and that anger can be expressed in lots of different ways. So if we do take the time to stop and recognize that this thing is coming up within us, this emotion is coming up in our body, and start to observe, like, what is the actual tactile experience that I'm having in my body that's associated with this emotion? Like that's one level of it. Just like the full on, like, what are the indicators? What are the changes that I'm feeling within my body? So that's, then what thoughts? What thoughts are coming up in my mind? How is this arising within me? And then, instead of allowing that to go outward, but actually taking the time sort of to sit with it and observe it. So this is where we can purposely, like in the meditation practice we did today, I said to you, don't choose an emotion that's too strong. As you become more comfortable with working with emotions in your practice, you can start to work with the things that are stronger, that are like really showing up as obstacles for you in your life. It's hard, but if you can do that there with yourself and experience it and start to see that, hey, yes, my anger is real, my feelings are real, I'm not trying, but it's made up of all these different aspects, different experiences, different things that I think I heard or I think I know. Some of it maybe isn't true, some of it is, and start to see the pieces and the components that make it up. We start to notice also that it is impermanent, it does change. I'm this angry in this moment, but I'm a little less angry in the next, and a little less angry in the next. And you start to be able to work with it in a way that helps you better understand where it's coming from and how to work with it. And then also, what has happened for me is then I begin to see my role in it, in the overall experience, and also how that the other person is only doing what they think will help make them happy, will help reduce their suffering. This is the thing that I think is really important too, that we can learn through practice, is that at our root, when we say like we're all equal, there's like a way to think about us all being equal is that we all want to be happy and we all want to be free from suffering. All beings. Every being has that foundational quality of being. And so even when we do something that does come off in an angry way or in a hurtful way or some harmful kind of act, there's an underlying part of that where the person, like, we're doing it because we think it's going to help. We may not be thinking that exactly in the moment, but we do deep down. We think that it's going to solve something. It's going to reduce the suffering or bring happiness. So that's something to sit with as well, because it's a lot to get your head around, but that's there. And it's helpful when we remember that. Wow, okay. Yeah.
Anger is an interesting emotion that I spent my fair time thinking about it. And
Anger, yeah.
yeah, and like, I can't think of too many situations where it isn't a mask for some other emotion. And like discerning, when I feel a flare of anger, it's usually because I feel something else.
Yeah. Insulted, discounted, manipulated. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, so like when I feel anger, a lot of times I don't sit with it and try and move past it because I want to, like, what am I really reacting to? Which is like, which is the root of the suffering that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's just because my partner's like, you never get angry. I'm like, well, I feel anger, but then I'm trying to deal with
transform it.
Yeah. But it is because I feel it, but and sometimes it's like you should sit with their anger, and it's like, okay, well, what am I sitting with? I'm reacting to something. So it's just it's an interesting.
Well, and I think part of what you're hitting on too is that with maturity and having more experience, more life experience, if we actually do any of this kind of work with the mind body, then we do get better at being able to see these things coming up and know it for what it is, and like start to look for like what are the causes. Yeah, sounds like that's what's happening sort of organically for you now after some practice. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Anything else from anyone before we move toward lead primary?
I'd love to share.
Thanks, Jesse.
My name is Sarah. I find that I move into action as a way to protect myself against emotion, and it's so quick. Like even this morning, sometimes I want to move from a stimulus right into, so that I don't let it really come in. And it's just very defended. And so, this is, I think one of the messages I'm taking away is to value and not own, because that's
Yeah.
right, but to
observe.
Allow.
Yeah. Yeah. Allow
to be in the allowing, because I move very quickly into push-pull. Just gotta, and it's really defensive. So I think there's just a fear, really. I think there is a fear of the vulnerability of raw emotion when it's just me and it. Yeah.
Well, what you're hitting on, you've mentioned like 3 or 4 of the kleshas, right? Like right in that the couple of sentences, like the push, the pull, the raga, the vesha, the fear is coming from maybe of innovation, this like deep-seated fear of death. That's like, it's just like, and so part of what looking at it, just even spending a little bit of time with the experiences can reveal to us that they are impermanent, changing. That's comforting when it's something that it's not great, it's there's multiplicity there. There's lots of different aspects to it. It's not just one thing. It's not fixed. It's not stuck. And it's interdependent. There's a lot of cause and effect happening there. Conditional, there's conditions that are playing into it too. So there's like that whole equation. And when we shift from, and this is like coming from Mingyur Rinpoche too, it's like when we shift from thinking singular, permanent, independent to impermanent, multiplicity, interdependence, we're moving from an unhealthy sense of self to a healthy sense of self, and we can deal with the world in a much better way. So really, really cool. And Mingyur Rinpoche said something that I wrote down. He said, hatred cannot exist without feeling in the body. It is in 3D now. So like when you do recognize that and sit with the experience, it transforms the experience from this to something that starts to, have texture to it. You can work with it. All right, cool. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Closing.
Oh, we should, but we'll do it at the end of primary. We're out of time. So if you need to use the restroom, feel free. And you can put the sheets up here. Will you collect those, Matt?
I think you can keep them if you want.
The sheets?
Yeah.
If you want to. I'm done with. I gotta print a new one for this. So.
But you're gonna keep them for the next cycle through, right?
Well, the invocation, yeah, but. Oh, you mean like 2 years from now when we start over again?
Yeah.